go ahead and get started.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Awesome. So, hi everyone that's on the chat. I am Chasma. I'm the founder of Try and Conquer, which is an inclusive platform connecting Black, Indigenous women of color to local outdoor activities to use as a healing modality for helping them manage and conquer health and wellness challenges. I'm really excited to continue our inaugural Women in Wellness Summit. This is a virtual series of conversations with a variety of experts and enthusiasts, all sharing their knowledge to encourage women and empower them with the necessary tools and confidence to venture outdoors. So far, we've covered topics on mental health and nature as a healing modality with two amazing healthcare professionals and fitness professionals. We also did Mastering the Outdoors for Mental Health with a licensed therapist. Our summit continues through March 8th. Coinciding with International Women's Day. Please be sure to check the link in our Instagram bio. Our Instagram is @TryXConquer to see the full lineup of speakers and sessions. These sessions are, again, in partnership with people from a variety of intersections and backgrounds, all with the common goal to utilize the outdoors and green spaces to get closer to wellness. Today, we are diving into mental resilience with Kerry Michael. Thrilled to speak with Kerry today. A little bit about her. She was born in Ethiopia and moved to the UK at the very young age of 14 after earning a full college scholarship. She entered her professional career, quickly building a reputation for success and developing an excellent understanding of enterprise, business to business, marketing, and project management in the translation and software industry. Kerry spent 10 years working with companies like Google and IBM and has seen firsthand the devastating impact the past recession and the current pandemic has had on employee mental health. Given her experiences in both corporate settings and personal hardships with immigrating at a very young age, she sharpened her ability to build mental resilience and enjoys sharing her experiences and tips for others to effectively manage and overcome the pressures to avoid burnout. Before we dive into our session, I'd like to start by emphasizing that this is a safe space, and I would like to invite the folks in our virtual room to feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. And if you're comfortable, share with us one obstacle you're proud to have overcome or one thing that you're actively working to overcome. And if at any point during the discussion you have a question, go ahead and type that in that same box. And at the very end, we'll do a QA. With that said, thank you again, Kerry, for joining us. And thank you to everyone who is signed into the session. Kerry, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself from your perspective in your own words?
Yes, thank you for the lovely introduction, Chasma, and I'm very excited to be part of this, and thank you for everyone on the call as well. You'll either be asleep at the end of this session or be inspired. Let's hope it's one or both, either one. Let me start by telling my story growing up in Ethiopia. I was born in Addis Ababa in 1982, not afraid to say my age. When the country was going through a bit of instability, it just so happened it became a communist country, so it wasn't an easy place to live. I was born to my mom and dad who were together then and are still now 40 years later. My mom was a nurse in the local hospital and my dad was a journalist. Both always stayed, on modest salaries with not much to spare. And I was one of the most, wanted babies. My mom had miscarriages, so they were looking forward to having me. My dad was working as a journalist, which was also a difficult job. And at the time, not only was the country going through communism, there was a war with Eritrea on the border. And part of his job was to report on that war. And when my mom was in her late stages of her pregnancy with myself, he'd actually traveled to the border with the Ethiopian military to report on the first lines of the war. And one evening after dinner, he overhears one of the main Ethiopian military generals on the radio requesting the Ethiopian Air Force, unfortunately, to hit the Ethiopian camp because they were surrounded. He tells this story to this day because he probably would have never made it back if he didn't survive that ordeal. So I've got quite a resilient family as well. I would say that I had a very comfortable upbringing, and my parents, like most African parents, were very focused on education. That was very important, which now I realize is a good thing to invest in. Later down the years, my mom managed to change her job from a nurse and become a medical representative for a Swiss company based in Addis Ababa. And that enabled her to put me through private education. And I went and ended up in a school that was run by the Indian embassy, which also had a similar curriculum to the British. And I was being educated in English. I had quite good grades. I was quite good in mathematics, physics, naturally, subjects that people didn't like. And unfortunately, because of that, I was bullied. I was not welcomed, you think, because I was the best person scoring grades. Also, in terms of social circle, our parents were quite strict. We weren't really allowed to socialize with a lot of people. They didn't want me interacting with boys at such a young age. Understandably now, looking at it, it was the right thing to do, but that also made me socially awkward around people. So I only had a few friends and a support circle. Fast forward to 13 years old, and I was really fed up of the lockdown lifestyle. Plus, I knew deep inside that I was destined for greater things. So I really started applying for scholarships. I remember I used to force my mum to drive me to the British Council library every week. There was no internet. I had to write letters to all these schools around the world. And I was sending off at least 20 to 25 letters a week, waiting months later, rushing down to the post office and opening the letterbox and expecting a miracle. And it did happen. I managed to win a full college scholarship, as Chasma said, to a UK school. And that's how I ended up here. And it was, even after I got here, I faced quite a lot of adversity, I would say. People were trying to be polite and welcoming, but there were certain things of, questions like, did I come from a hut? What's my hair made out of, etc., etc. At the time, I was too young to understand all of that. So it wasn't as hurtful, but also growing up, because I had a lot of resilience, I just got through it really by not reacting to it as much. And again, relying on a small support circle. I left that college with again, great grades in physics and mathematics. And I was offered a couple of places as an aerospace engineer. So I did end up in a university down south in London, studying aerospace engineering for a year. But unfortunately, there were a lot of distractions. The reason I moved to London is because I felt it was a bit more mixed. My school was up north near the Scottish borders. There weren't many Black people. I was the second Black person in our entire school. So I thought, move closer to family and friends down south, but it didn't work because there was a lot of distractions and it wasn't great for me. So I quit university and I took some time out really to reassess myself, go into work, and I ended up in hospitality and I ended up having my son then. So I had to take a bit more time out. But I did move away from London at some point, and in 2007, which also was a great change, to a place called Reading, which is quite close to London down south. And that move enabled me to go back to university. So I was working full time. I knew I had to go and get qualifications to get into the tech industry, which I wanted to, and build myself up. As mentioned, I've worked with companies like Google, IBM, which is great experience, but I never really wanted or saw myself going up the career ladder for some reason. I've now reached a point, I would say, in my career where I've built a lot of connections and a lot of skill sets where I can charge consultancy rates. And now I can see, even after the pandemic, that, I need to raise my voice more. Probably go out there, tell my story, inspire people. And I'm going to be speaking a lot more about that. So excited to have a conversation with everyone here.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was a lot I could also relate to from personal experience. You sharing how you were, one of, what was it, one of two Black people, Black students at your school. That it definitely was my experience earlier on in my education. And it was, like you share, there were things that happened that you didn't really know just yet, but you got like quickly introduced to some negative experiences being the only person of color. So like tapping into that a little bit, I think I have a good idea of how you're going to answer this next question, but let's go for it anyway. Could you share with us your very first experience with adversity and how you dealt with it then and how you think you might deal with it like now, knowing what you now know?
Okay. So what our parents always taught us, our core values that I still live by. And part of that, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be diverse. It's okay to have your own opinions. It's okay to stand out. It's okay to be kind and loving. And these values have always persisted with myself. And I don't necessarily always follow crowds, not that crowds have always followed me either. Going back to my story where I ended up in private school, that wasn't really planned as well. I remember when I was around 4 years old in kindergarten, my parents put me in a public kindergarten, and I still remember it to this day. I was young, but I guess memories strike emotions, and I was hit on the back of the head with, I don't know, some sort of object. And I remember sort of feeling faint. And there was this other small girl who'd picked up like a tiny little stone and hit me on the back of the head. And, the teachers came over and took me away, and my parents came. Later on, we found out when, the teachers had to ask her the reasons, and she targeted me because I looked different. I was of a lighter skin. I stood out. It looked like I came from a wealthy family. I was trying to take or misrepresent myself. A little child, for me now looking back, can't think like that. That part of thinking is always taught by the parents, that prejudice. So I faced prejudice even through my own community, even as a child, so innocent, not knowing anything. Now, due to this accident, my family made their decision to protect me and put me in private school, which sort of worked out a little bit better. At the time, I don't remember feeling anxious. I don't remember that that's a trigger for me even now. If somebody came approaching me aggressively, I just wish I had the chance to confront her when the teachers were in there, because even at that age, I liked asking questions. I like understanding things. If I had the choice, I would have rather been in the room and understood it and responded, even if I'm a child. So I use that methodology now. One of the methods is, even if people are being difficult or coming from a difficult place, I try and have normal conversations. Of course, there are points in life where it's impossible to have those conversations, and it's okay to walk away and be silent. When I moved to the new school, I still faced adversity. That's the Indian private school in Ethiopia. Even that, there was a majority Black population and only a few Indians or foreigners. And, again, being bullied by Black students that I'm not Black enough, or I don't fit enough, or something is standing out. So I find strength as well. So my second methodology is always have, even if it's one or two people, those support group, those people are always going to get you through situations.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. I fully agree. Yeah, definitely having people that can support you makes so much more of a difference as you're trying to navigate these difficult, situations. I want to touch on, this stereotype. A lot of us get the strong Black woman stereotype, right? What do you think is the difference between resilience and the strong Black woman stereotype?
Okay, so resilience to me is withstanding anything, and resilience for me exists in everyone. There is a recent story I read about a Paralympian called Jessica Smith. She's an author and a speaker. And Jessica was born missing her left arm and then suffered an accident as a toddler where she had 15% burns to her body. Said that she saw that actually her life's adversities were an advantage in the long run. Our vulnerabilities are in fact enabling us to learn more about our own level of resilience and our own level of ability to adapt to new situations. Learn that you don't have to do everything. I have to keep reminding myself every day. We need to stop feeling guilty. So that's resilience as well. Learning to delegate. You know, again, support network. Always get people to help you because we can't do it all. We can't protect ourselves. And remember your worth. To me, remembering that worth is also resilience. So when faced with setbacks, it's easy to fall into a rabbit hole of feeling inadequate, feeling sorry for ourselves. You know, I felt like that. I feel like that at times. So I put my hands up, you know, knowing who you are. I have to keep reminding myself that, you know, we're here for a purpose. But it's not to say that there are issues that might limit our progress. For instance, as women, we have specific challenges, and then women of color, we have even more challenges, right? How do we get past them? We need the help of men. So it's not just an issue for women. For me, men and women will still need to get to work together to make this happen. How do we get past it? Men and women, you know, even in management, where leadership can set the tone at the top when it comes to how people in the organization respond and react to challenges, we as leaders should walk the walk. And set that company culture. Now, the stereotype, I've heard that a lot of times before of, you know, oh, you're black, you're feisty, you're strong. But I haven't heard that about other demographics. You know, I've heard that in the boardroom. I've heard that from investors. I've heard that from my neighbors and friends. I now don't respond to it. I don't, sometimes when I have close relationships, I try and explain the difference. But for some reason, even in the UK and Africa, if you're strong, if you're independent, if you're outspoken, you know, I'm expected to speak with a soft voice and be sweet and kind. And, you know, I am, you know, I've got a strong voice. So I hear that stereotype of the strong Black woman. I don't hear the stereotype of the strong Asian woman or the strong Caucasian or white women. So I do feel there's a lot of education that needs to be done in society of, because we speak up a lot and we haven't had voice for such a long time. I see a lot of changes and positive changes coming through. There are a lot of role models for us now. And I want to be part of that journey.
Mm-hmm. Excellent answer. Like there are so many things in that answer that you touched on that I want to just kind of like recap. One of the things that resonated with me is the fact that you mentioned delegating. Like that's something everyone should do and get better at. And as a founder of a company and realizing I have a ton of tasks, like I can't do them all, asking for help or delegating to someone who has expressed interest and support of me. There's not, like, I don't have to carry all these things because there are people willing to assist me and aid me in this thing. I also love that you said that we need the help of men. That's so important. And I think a lot of times when we discuss the empowerment of women or the burden sometimes that are placed on women, people think that it's just our problem to solve. No, like we need everyone because it's everyone's kind of issue and problem. And I want to recognize too that there are several men on this call. I hope you all are taking heed to this. We actively need your support in helping to, you know, aid us in our work. Like we cannot do this work on our own, and also acknowledging that men have a different level of power and privilege, and so absolutely need your help in, you know, furthering our, you know, our goals and our work that we're trying to do in that. Yeah, I think that stereotype is definitely an unnecessary burden that's placed on us, whether we've accepted it or not. Strong Black woman, like it sounds great, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm a strong woman. And it's also tied to the way that I show up in the world, but it also kind of sets the tone that you can handle everything. And that's very much not true. And it also kind of sets the tone for everything that comes at us, like that we have different disadvantages that other folks, and just because we have this title of strong Black woman, it, you know, kind of sets us up for failure in a sense, like, oh, you should be able to handle this, or you're strong enough, you got this, when no, we actually need support, we need help. We are strong, but that doesn't mean we can do it all, or even that we want to do it all. So I love the answer that you gave, very like much encompassed everyone, men, women, and this, you know, stereotype that we kind of need to work to dismantle. So talking about like all of these experiences that you've had from childhood, you know, your school, and also corporate, let's dive into the corporate experience, right? So you've experienced a lot of things in your professional career. Tell us how your experience is in the corporate world have shaped your resilience and your outlook on that.
Yes. So going into the corporate world, I know I'm sat at the outside of it now, whether I'm doing consultancy or working with clients or building a business around solutions. I remember recently, well, over the last few years, trying to raise money for a business startup idea before I moved up north, and meeting with angel investors and VCs week after week. You know, we were on some large platforms that Google was throwing events to introduce us. I had some great networks within the London investment community, even up north. And there was a persistent messaging coming through, saying that, you know, it just wasn't good enough to invest in. And my friends who pitched to the same investors, the same events, but from a different demographic, would get their initial seed capital. Now, I can give you an idea of seed capital. I'm not sure if you've read articles about the UK. Our seed capital sizes are quite small in comparison to the US investment market. So people ask generally between 100, 250, 500,000. Whereas in the US, you know, you ask a lot more than that, where people will think, what's wrong with your business idea? If you're asking $100,000, what is wrong with you? Can you not just go down the bank or raise from friends and family? But it's a lot more cautious out here. Now, I haven't experienced what it's like to pitch out in the US, but I have experienced pitching over the phone, and it's sort of similar pushback. So, you know, going back to my friends, the same events, the same networking, the same pitching to the same VCs, they've won their seed capital of 500,000, 250,000. The feedback to me from most of the investors would come in forms of, you know, the product is great, it's fantastic. The clients you've managed to pilot and on board are fantastic. You know, but we need full-time co-founders backing you. And what kind of co-founders? Oh yeah, well, these type of co-founders, you know, either we need to come on board and you need to pay us to represent you so we can get you investment. You know, it's just, you have a great idea, but you're not the right fit for us. I do believe it is because I don't fit that demographic of the young British or European entrepreneur. I was recently on a call with Mandela Dixon from the Founders Gym. For those of you on the call that don't know, the Founders Gym is a program for startups and entrepreneurs, and Chasma's been on the program, so it's quite a good program to get on. Especially, I like the idea it focuses on people from ethnic minorities and giving them a chance and connections. And on that call, I realized for the first time that there's only 80 Black women in the US who've managed to raise $1 million and above, and that's insane. And I got to speak to a few of them or ask questions. I find that sad and disappointing myself. So in terms of the corporate world, I would like this status quo to change. It really needs to change. And I want to keep raising my voice, speaking about it. And more Black women deserve the chance to have having faced adversity as part of our DNA, their DNA, I believe they are more resilient and more intelligent to be able to build successful businesses. And if we can't change the investment circle, then more of us need to start, combining as a community and actually providing our own funding, because it's ridiculous to hear that only 80 women so far have been funded over $1 million.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely an ongoing issue. It's an inspiring story, but it's also a very frustrating one to hear. Like, you think about it, like, oh, they've done the impossible. Well, it shouldn't be impossible. It shouldn't be that difficult, right, to raise whatever amount of money. But I see someone Nasira mentioned that love Mandela. I love Mandela too. And to her credit, those women who raised $1 billion, who raised $1 million, all went through Founder Gym, and hopefully Try and Conquer gets there one day. Thank you for that answer. I think that, gives us a lot to think about in terms of resilience in economics and financial, financial well-being. That's a huge one that oftentimes there's not enough focus on. People think about like empowering and giving you like the good, positive, encouraging words, but like also let's think about money, because that's probably that's one of the one of the best ways to really empower and help people for the long term is like economically. So talking about all of these difficulties and mental resilience that you've gone through, were there moments that you felt like you weren't going to get through them through certain difficult periods? And obviously you did. How did you do that, and what tips can we take away from your experiences?
Okay, this one is a difficult one to answer. I would say that going back into my primary and secondary school, that's where my resilience would have started and prepared me for the situations in my adult life. I've noticed that in terms of carrying on and dealing with difficult situations or difficult people, I still have a lot of growth to do, and I avoid confrontation. I don't know if it's because of the incident from kindergarten. I do feel like there are other people I notice can communicate and calm people down. So part of me being able to confront people would enable me to get through certain difficult periods, because I still face, whether it's clients, whether it's personal relationships, that's, I think, an area I'd like to work on is like peaceful communication, but sometimes it's just doesn't come across. Maybe I'm stereotyped by certain people. I'm not talking about close friendships. I'm talking about, for example, whether it be neighbors or people that just know me as an acquaintance. I've faced other challenges in my life where, it's not just being about skin color. It's being about a woman. It's being even from a different way of thinking or a different idea, or me liking certain things that are not of the norm or the general population. Now, I mentioned the North, so I moved up here 3 years ago for work-life balance. I live near the Scottish borders. Absolutely love it. It's one of the most beautiful landscapes in the world, the most photographed. We have the Lake District nearby, and then we have high mountains up in the Scottish Highlands. Absolutely beautiful. And I did find that work balance because I was working from home, which also made it difficult to keep those connections, those support networks. So I was really living a lockdown lifestyle before people knew what a lockdown lifestyle was. And living in the city, I found it very difficult to go out and sort of de-stress and get away from the screen, because I've always been working on a screen. And in times I was living in London, I think that was one of the most difficult times where I was in a very dark place. I literally didn't have a roof on my head. I moved out of hospitality. I wasn't really working, and I was sleeping on people's couches. But, even then I had a vision that it was just temporary. So I know what it feels like not to have a roof on your head. Now, I'm not complaining because I also know, coming from Ethiopia, I know what it feels like not to be able to eat. Ethiopia is one of those countries, there's no welfare system. If I'm on the street, I will starve. So I was okay. I mean, the experience I had in London was not as bad as what it would be like if I was back in Ethiopia. So it's very difficult to say this, and I guess we're hearing it a lot over the last year, is there is nothing as bad as, for example, whatever we think is worse in our situation, there's always something else that's worse. So it's being empathetic. It's knowing that we're all connected. It's I'm not saying, you know, peace and kumbaya, everybody should think like that, but it's just thinking there is one person, even the next door down, that is having another difficulty that's worse than what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart thing to keep in mind. Like when you're going through difficulties, you know, sometimes it really, like as difficult as it is, I think sometimes it really is helpful to have empathy for yourself and for other folks around. That doesn't lessen it doesn't lessen your experience or minimize your experience at all. I think it can actually help to make those mental shifts. So leading into my next question, I'm assuming that having empathy was one of the things that helped you make mental shifts, to kind of like convince yourself that, you know, I can keep going despite what I'm going through. But can you dive a little bit deeper and like expand on how you made mental shifts to, you know, I guess maybe cheer yourself on and like convince yourself that you could do this? Because it sounds like there are some very difficult things that, you know, probably at the time didn't seem very positive on coming out of it. So yeah, share with us how you did that.
Yes, so going back into, I'd love to, by the way, it's, you know, the mental shifts, I think one of the most important things, because everything sits within our mind, and that's why we're talking about mental health. So these are some of the things I did, you know, build connections. Again, going back to people around you. I was listening to a documentary recently that people who live longer, healthier lives, when they examine them over a 50-year period or more, is because they have good relationships around them. It's nothing to do with the best medical health care, the best food. It's actually having good relationships. So over the last year, I've actually realized sometimes I was sad about losing certain connections, but prioritizing relationships is key. So I've realized which types of people are really important in my life and bring positivity. So connecting with empathy and understanding people reminded me that I'm not alone in the midst of difficulties, but with the right people, not the wrong people. Unfortunately, that's, you know, we can't let everybody in. We have to sometimes keep a distance between certain people and find trustworthy people, compassionate people who validate your feelings, which they've done for me and helped me. And the pain of traumatic events can lead some people to isolate themselves. So it helped me having that support from people not to go into that. Now, whether it's a weekly date night with the spouse or planning lunch out with a friend or just going cycling, you know, I only learned how to ride a bike nearly a year ago. I still wobble, but, you know, it took me 38 years to learn how to ride a bike. And that was having people who cared about me around me, so I didn't feel scared, and I faced that. I joined groups. So I joined hiking groups, amazing groups. I can't wait until we come out of the third lockdown in the UK, where we all get together and still hike outdoors, which is such a safe activity despite the virus. And again, I met some amazing people in local organizations and research groups. And the next thing I would say is always foster wellness, take care of your body. I forget that every other day. You know, self-care is so important. It's become a buzzword as well. It's legitimate practice for mental health, and it helps build resilience. You know, I was a yoga teacher. I'll mention that before, for children. You know, I've run marathons, and, you know, I used to be very fit. Now, yes, I'm keeping up with the fitness, but not where I need to be. And that also affects my moods, etc. So I always recommend whatever your passion is, but just keep active every day, and little bits do. And with that, I tie in, so I mentioned yoga. The most important thing now, every morning I wake up to reset the day or set the day, is mindfulness. Mindful journaling, yoga, other spiritual practices like prayer and meditation have helped me a lot, and also helped me build connections and restore some of my relationships. And when I journal, meditate, and pray, I find that I also feel grateful, which is very important. Again, we worry about things we don't have, and we really need to start looking at, people are changing, seeing a new perspective in life since last March, and we have to be grateful for whatever we have and avoid those negative outlets. So people who are moaning, who are complaining, and and also using bandages like alcohol and drugs. I've seen that in my 20s. It doesn't help. And focus instead of giving the body time to manage stress, and that's mindfulness. It's being present in every moment. Lastly, finding purpose. I think I mentioned it before. I have, even recently into last year, just asked myself, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And I do believe everybody has a purpose, and I feel my purpose is about connecting people. And even I'm building a startup idea that connects people through languages. We speak so many languages around the world, and if we spoke one, how much together can we be? Who knows? But being proactive and finding your purpose, just understanding it's the inner voice. It can never come from outside, is also very important.
Absolutely. That was so beautifully said. We all speak so many languages across the world, but if we all spoke one, how much more connected would we be? I think that also sums up everything that you said in regards to this answer in such an eloquent way. One of the things that is coming up as a theme is support from others and relationships. We think about mental resilience, that can kind of seem very self-motivated and very insular, because it's, we're talking about your own mental health, but your own mental resilience. But we need other people. And I think this has come up in the chat too. We need others so much in this world. And I think that has also become so much more prominent as a result of the pandemic. It took away and changed a lot of how we interacted with other people. A lot of folks are on lockdown, some are still on lockdown, and events are canceled. And, there's this risk of harming or infecting other people and transmitting this virus that we don't really have a handle on. So the way that we connect has changed a lot, but it has almost made it so much more important. And even for me, with building this community, it's tying back to you saying your purpose, it has really made it more prominent that this is absolutely my purpose, and I absolutely need people like you and everyone who's on this call to make my mental resilience, healthier and stronger. And I couldn't have said that in a more eloquent way. That was so beautifully put. Since I brought up COVID and the pandemic, how has that impacted your capacity to recover quickly or at all from difficulties?
Well, it has been quite a challenging time, I would say. COVID, initially, I was not coping well during the UK first lockdown, I'd say. And I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming in February. It's almost like I saw a trailer in Asia, and even close to us in Italy, there was a movie trailer almost, but I was in denial. When it hit, I couldn't have predicted it. Everything happened so quickly. No neighbors, no connection. It just allowed half an hour out each day. Although where I live now, it's quite rural, so there was no restrictions in terms of just going out for half an hour on in comparison to just sitting on a park bench in a city. That's what I love about living in the countryside, is that there is so much room to go around and be lost in the forests and the rivers, and you know, you can't restrict that to half an hour of activity outside. You know, it was nice every day having Zoom calls, you know, having a glass of champagne in the middle of the day with nothing to do. It's like, oh yeah, take time off. But quickly it started becoming like affecting me mentally. The fact I couldn't just connect with people. I'm such a social person. I'm a social bee. I like people. I'm sure a lot of people have realized now. People who say, I don't like hugs, I don't like this, I'm sure would say, oh, you know, I'd still prefer to be around people. So but when we came out, I think in the summer in the UK, it was nice to reset everything. But in terms of career and reassessing things, it's actually been the best thing for me. I've seen so much, you know, I've found that I could change, I could pivot my ideas. There were so many opportunities I could look at, even in terms of B2B, where my experiences business to business prospecting had changed. I noticed a lot of people were spending time on social media, so I saw that as an opportunity. You know, decision makers who were not responsive before, when you made a message personal, became more responsive. I heard this guy on a webinar the other day saying, my cable company in the US called me up and went, are you okay? Are you okay to pay the bill? Or should we give you another 3 to 6 months because we're telling all our customers not to worry? And he said, I don't even like that cable company. They're a giant corporate mess. But the fact that they called me asking, are you okay, just made me want to stick to them a bit more, right? So I found the same personal messaging when I'm reaching out on LinkedIn or sending a personal message, not letting it sound like it's a machine going, you know, not even appropriating the sentences, going, hello, Chasma, I hope you're having a nice day. I looked at your website. Hey, you were speaking at this conference the other day. A machine doesn't do that. A person took personal time out to hear who you are and offer you something to help you. That means they care. So it's been an opportunity. I think I've seen so many businesses become personal. It's great. And it's helped me look at, again, I've always been one of those stop and think kind of people, but I've lost my mindfulness, but it's made me more mindful now of nothing else matters. Like an email could be sent that could land me a deal tomorrow, but I have to stop and take a breather. Or earlier, you know, I didn't have much time in the day, but I've been missing walks. I literally today, I had to go out for an hour and take the fresh countryside in and just listen to chilled beats. I'm getting old. I used to be more heavy rap, hip hop, but there are times where I just couldn't hear that, but now it's just chilled beats or jazz. And, you know, some industries have seen growth, and that's my industry, tech, and I'm sure you've seen it on your end. Healthcare, there's just so many things going on. But personally, I see it as a positive change. The beginning wasn't that great, but I've never seen a turn. Like, I wanted this life. I used to tell people I work remotely and it's respectable now. I don't have to, you know, I was getting burnt out driving, even to client sites, back and forth, up and down the country, getting on flights, flying out to Dubai, flying here. It was, people saw it as a corporate fancy lifestyle. I remember some comments. No, it's not. It is not. You're actually losing life by traveling, not for pleasure reasons, right? But just as part of work and life. So no, I see it as a positive for myself, and I hope people within the chat room and whoever listens to this also have seen a positive change.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely, I agree. It definitely was very tough at the beginning. It, you know, obviously is still tough for a lot of other people just because it manifests in different ways for different people. But for me, for sure, it was very tough at the beginning. And I think it was kind of like a learning curve of understanding and figuring out, okay, how do we navigate? What are the rules? What are the restrictions? How do we keep ourselves safe as much as possible? And I think, you know, all of what you said really encompassed, you know, the beginning to now and like how we've kind of navigated and recovered. Also, in your answer, you talked a lot about like this beautiful rural area that you live in, which sounds very like I'm a little jealous. It sounds amazing. So that leads into this next question around, you have this business and you're very busy. How do you find time for the outdoors with your career being as successful as it is?
Right. It's not very easy to find time to relax. I have to carve time out basically, and I'm going to go into that. And even if I don't, I just have to drop everything. There is always a voice at the back of my head, and I hope other people hear it. Is no, this needs to be done. This needs to be sent. And every person you speak to, or there's always deadlines to meet, and sometimes you just think, just drop everything. Even I shut my phone and go out. So it's so I go back into, so part of last year I had to go back into my childhood and pick what are the top 3 things that used to make me happy. Now, for me, it was playing with animals, always being outdoors, because whether it be Ethiopia or here in the UK, I've always been an outdoors person, as in I love countryside and beautiful scenery and hills. So and then it's always also been learning new things. I'm sure these 3 things will keep chopping and changing, but we sometimes we do things because we think we should do them, and people think because it's trendy to ride a bike, you have to ride a bike. The reason I mentioned earlier I went into riding a bike is because since I love the outdoors and I saw so many people in my area even riding past my house, and I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to experience this, the trees and everything on a bike? Walking is a bit boring at times. Like, I just wanted to do that. And I didn't do biking because everybody else is doing it. I did it because I wanted the experience of experiencing outdoors on something I've never really done before. And that comes to animals as well. So I've recently started horse riding, which I never ever would have been able to do in London. So I started in Ethiopia, actually. My dad used to take us outdoors, out the city. He comes from a village. They're actual really good horse riders. They actually ride without saddles. Don't ask me, that's just a skill I don't think I can master. I would stick to a saddle, but I find horses are my favorite animals. I think most animals are intuitive, but horses even so. I think there are cases where horses can be unfriendly, but I do believe if you build a relationship, they're not like dogs. They're not loyal straight away. I find you have to build a relationship. If they don't like you, they don't like you. So, going out riding, there are accidents sometimes, I feel, because either people haven't built a relationship or that horse is showing signs of, emotions. They're quite like that. So to me, I always think of recess time in school, right? It used to be exciting. So I want everyone to think that way. For me, recess time, I looked forward to it all day, right? Just running outside and being able to play. I don't know if millennials think like that, but I did. I was just any reason to go outside and play with anything, right? So I think like that now. Sometimes I have to take myself back into my childhood. How fun was it to just go outside? So, I live in such a beautiful area. Even I have a house with a nice garden I've started looking after. So I've started doing weird things like just going outside the door, which I never used to in the morning, and just walking around the garden and just looking across the fields, because I need that break even before I start, not just to sit in a house and switch on the computer. So I say my tip is think of recess time, and hopefully recess time wasn't traumatizing. It was a fun thing to remember.
Amazing answer. I love it. I don't know if you could see how wide my smile got when you started talking about certain elements of your answer. In regards to the horses, that actually came up in our session on Wednesday, horse therapy. So The fact that you brought that up is like, okay, you're echoing some things that are pretty consistent throughout this series. Also, I love that you mentioned thinking about it as recess. I think that kind of lowers the barrier for people to think about getting outdoors. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be some extreme thing like hiking. If you're not a hiker, then don't hike. If you're not a biker, then don't bike. Do things that feel good for you and that are comfortable for you. And I, agree with you. I love getting outdoors, and I think about it in this kind of almost childlike sense, just because when you're a child, you think about things in like, it's almost like a very innocent way. You feel very free. And you're able to, like, you haven't been tainted by so many external factors yet, right? So the way I kind of approach the outdoors and how I want to have other folks approach the outdoors with Try and Conquer is removing and reducing the barriers to it. We are planning to offer activities that are like very beginner friendly, from like walking, as you mentioned, to things like biking and very like a lot of diverse activities for anybody to try. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it. And you put that in a very nice, succinct way, that it doesn't have to be like this overwhelming thing. You could just stand outside on your front patio or porch and just take a couple deep breaths in and out and just, relax and restore yourself.
Yes.
So we are nearing the end of our session. I wanted to open it up for any questions or comments folks wanted to give to either Kerry or I. So feel free to add that in the box right now. And while you do that, I would love to also provide a little more context for Try and Conquer. So we currently have an app in beta. If you are interested, please go ahead and check that out. It can be accessed through your mobile phone or a tablet's browser. So it is at tryxconquer.app. And from there, you can see all of what we're working towards. Right now, we are looking for outdoor ambassadors. These are the women who will lead outdoor activities. So if that's you, if you have a strong interest in leading a walk in your neighborhood, in your area, or you are wanting to like begin your journey outdoors, then we are definitely the place for you. You are our audience, and we would love for you to sign up on our app. We will also be sharing our survey immediately after the wrap of this summit to just get some information. How was this for you? Also understanding our customer market a little bit more so that we build the features that work best for our audience. So it looks like there are no questions, which is totally fine, but it looks like there's a lot of great feedback in the chat. People are saying, oh, Addie mentioned that she was overcoming becoming a people pleaser and learning to put herself first, which is amazing. I support you on that journey, Addie. Addie is also one of our speakers for our session coming up on tomorrow, I believe, tomorrow at 1 p.m. So we look forward to having her join us. And who else is in here in the series that we need men? Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Kerry. All of the information you provided was so insightful. It really echoed a lot of the sentiments that I personally hold, and also some of the same sentiments and things that are just like coming up throughout this entire week of the summit. I love the fact that our audience is not just women in this session, and so that's amazing. I really commend the guys for joining the session and expressing their personal experiences and their support for us in this journey. Thank you all. And with that said, Kerry, if there are ways that we can stay involved and in touch, let us know where to find you online.
Right. So everybody, you can find me at ytranslate.com. That's ytranslate.com. And my email address, I will write it in the chat box for everyone, is kerry.michael@ytranslate.com. So we combine machine learning with human translators to enable companies mainly to expand quite easily, because there are barriers now. Like I said, there's a lot of languages, but it's not affordable to use human translators. They're slow, they're expensive. So we lowered those barriers of entry by using machines, which has worked. And we also use humans to correct the machine, but it's much faster and a lot cheaper. So we're connecting the world one word at a time. And since March 2020, it has been very, very busy because a lot of businesses are seeing growth, especially online. So, but how can they communicate with new customers? They can't speak the language. So that's where we're helping.
Awesome. I think this is such a smart business. When I saw that that's what you did, I was like, oh my God, this is so almost like divine. In a past life, I worked for a translation agency, and we worked a lot with people, and they were very expensive and time consuming, but it is very impactful and very important and necessary work to be able to connect with other communities. And I commend you on your work and all of the things that you're doing, and also for sharing your time and space with us today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on board and you know, being able to share with you. And again, I'm inspired by your story. So, you know, I'd love to keep connecting, seeing where that goes. And thank you for the opportunity. I haven't delved down deep into my life story over the last year. I've kept quiet. I haven't been doing public speaking as I used to. So it's great to be back, and it's great to actually tell my new story and how it's changed quite quickly over the last year, but also there are parts from my childhood which I rarely talk about, and now I realize I just need to start sharing as well.
Yeah, I think there's power in our stories, and thank you again for sharing it with us, and thank you again for everyone joining. With that, we're going to wrap. There are more sessions to come from through the rest of March 8th, so be sure to check those out. Again, those are listed on our Instagram's bio. It's at TryXConquer on Instagram. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.